Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan and I have an endless TBR. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I know it's been a little while since I've uploaded. I've had a really rotten couple of weeks, which has precluded me from being able to film and post new videos. But I've been working on this vlog over the past couple of weeks that have been really awful. And I've been reading books that are called Uplit. I picked up this topic from one of my book club selections. This book club is called Shelf Indulgence, and we read a different genre every month. For January, we were reading a book that was termed Uplit, or uplifting literature. And that got me thinking, well, what are the characteristics of this genre? What other titles fall in? And what do I think about the books in this particular genre, the types of merits they might have? And it turned out to be really helpful to be able to escape into this uplifting world that talked about not always the easiest topics, but still maintained this uplifting and positive tone. So you'll sort of see through the vlog that's been over sort of the span of a month. I did have one other book to read, but have decided to cut that and cut my losses and move on to the next project. And at the end of the vlog, you'll probably see this very same outfit for my final thoughts and rankings. Well, good morning. First clip in a new vlog, and my cat is playing right in front of me, so you can probably hear her scrambling around. I was inspired by one of this month's book club selections, Evvie Drake Starts Over, to check out some other titles that are listed as uplit or uplifting literature. So I found a few backlist titles, a couple that are newer, and I think just one that I had never heard of, but looks absolutely adorable. So I started reading the audiobook for The Rosie Project by Graham Simpson. This is a series of like 4 or 5 books now featuring Don Tillman, who is a very specific scientist. Everything he does is quite methodical, thought out, very clear. And I'm only about 2 chapters in and not entirely sure that I love the voice. Right now he's very in his mind, sure of his method, and clear of where he wants to go in life. And the Rosie Project is going to be his questionnaire, his method to finding a suitable life partner for himself. So I think we're going to see some humanity and figuring out, how to human in the world with some trials and tribulations along the way. So about 2 chapters in, and I will let you know how that goes when I get a little bit further. It's pretty dark in my house. I'm here after work, so I apologize for the shadowy lighting that's occurring. But if I turn this lamp on, then obviously I'm blown out because it's directly behind my head. But I wanted to give you an update on what is going on in The Rosie Project by Graham Simpson. I got a good chunk of the audiobook done today while I was at work. I had some time to listen. And we have met Rosie. The whole conceit of the book is Dr. Tillman has created this questionnaire that's going to lead him to his ideal life partner. So Don has requested his very limited number of friends to say, hey, why don't you ask the women in your life to fill out this questionnaire and we'll see if they're a good match. He's made dating profiles, and instead of putting a picture of himself, he just puts this questionnaire up, and like, this is going to solve everything. I don't know that it's explicitly stated, and I don't think it's explicitly stated maybe in this book, but Don Tillman is highly coded as autistic. I believe in the book they use Asperger's, which, as I understand, is a term that's no longer used diagnostically, although the age of the character may mean that he would have been diagnosed as Asperger's. It sort of comes up throughout the book, conversations about Asperger's syndrome or autism and characteristics that maybe he recognizes in himself. But of course he doesn't, because there's a stereotype that Asperger's or autistic folks are typically unaware of their social ineptitude or their their struggles with social situations and relating to other people. So in any case, Dawn has taken this social awareness or lack thereof and says, I can science my way through this. Hey, Pen. Well, after I was so rudely interrupted by this very cute creature, I wonder if she'll continue to attack me as I keep talking. We'll find out. So Don has asked his friends to give this questionnaire to women that may be interesting to Don in order to date. And instead of doing that, Don just sends Rosie out on a date with Don Tillman. And they hit it off in their weird way. Rosie throws Don off of his schedule and into situations that he would never place himself in because it's not efficient use of time, or this is, an impractical question that you're asking. And she is searching for something that he feels he can make a method to find out the answer. So they start this science experiment, this project that they're working on together, and they're having truly and deep conversations. So I'll let you know what continues to happen between Rosie and Don, and if he ever gets her to actually take the questionnaire, because she hasn't done so, and yet they keep spending more and more time together. Good evening. It is currently Saturday night. I have had quite a lazy day after a quick trip to Costco, and Matt is out picking up dinner for the two of us. So I thought I'd take a couple minutes to let you know that I finished The Rosie Project by Graham Simpson. I have neglected to grab the narrator's name, but that'll be in the description box below. Finished The Rosie Project yesterday while I was shopping, so I listened to pretty much the back half of this novel in one reading. And there were a lot of elements, so when we last spoke, Don and Rosie were sort of getting to know each other, working on this separate project. And there were certainly friendly feelings that were happening. They related to each other in a way that Don's not used to with his other friends. But she hadn't taken the wife questionnaire and seemed pretty salty about some of the elements that may have been included on that questionnaire. So Don was going to some academic event, found a date, lied to her about his abilities, particularly regarding dancing, which is, a fairly natural feel that is sort of required. You can't just learn the steps and expect to be good at dancing. So it sort of crashes and burns until Rosie, who also happens to be at this event, I think she's maybe the date of another person, a colleague of Don's, until Rosie steps in and they wind up having it winds up being the talk of the party of their dance together and how natural everything was. And Don feels a turning point of I relate to her differently than other people in my life. So then they wind up on this international trip to New York City, and Rosie throws all of Don's plans out the window and makes him buy different gifts than he would have bought otherwise, to wear different clothes than he would have been prepared to wear. And after getting in trouble with the ethics board at his institution where he works, realizes I would give all of this up for Rosie. So spoilers for this 10-year-old book. He goes and proposes, and the end of the book is wrapped up very nicely. They're living together, they're going to be married, and everything's hunky-dory. So I'm not sure what the rest of the series entails. Yes, I smiled quite a few times as I was listening to this book going, oh my gosh, Dawn, you're so ridiculous. I probably won't pick up the rest of the series, but this was a good way to spend a few hours. It's a pretty short book. And yeah, I feel uplifted at the end with our happy ending. We sort of get almost a genre romance ending there. And the next selection for this particular vlog is a title known to many, So I'll be picking up Fredrik Backman's A Man Called Ove. I have this out of the library. It has a due date and people waiting. So we'll see what I think about this one. I know I'm probably going to be thinking of Tom Hanks in his silly movie, Man Called Otto. Why they changed his name, I have no idea. But maybe I'll find out as I learn more about this curmudgeonly man who doesn't like his neighbors or anyone around him. I'll let you know how it goes. Apologies for any background noise that you are getting. My dishwasher is running. My cat is playing with a spring that's skittering across the floor. But I wanted to give you a quick update on A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman and sort of my sense on Uplit as a genre so far. This book is beloved by so many people. And then I know other people that have DNF'd it, have put it down because they just can't stand the character. This book was published about 10 years ago now. It was published in 2012 in Sweden and then translated into English and published in the US in 2014. And a decade ago, that character, our main character, is 59 years old. So part of me as I'm reading this book is hearing Ove make a comment and go, okay, boomer. Like, there's just so much. He's listed in the description, in the blurb of the book, as a curmudgeon. But some of what he says is just so prejudiced, bigoted, that I'm like, why have I given this person 100 pages? Because he's just not very nice. We get to see some events that happened in his younger and formative years, his young adulthood, the loss of his parents, that have made things really hard for him. He's had to do a lot of things by himself, figure things out, and make mistakes along the way. But, 100 pages in, he's just not a very nice dude. And I know, based on the genre, that it's listed in this uplifting lit type of book list, that it's going to turn around and it's going to be really heartwarming. But there's a pretty solid part of me that just really doesn't care for our title character. So I can't say that I'm enjoying this book all that much. That's where I am on that. Uplit as a genre, so far I'm taking it to be, you have a main character that is not entirely, I don't want to say not entirely likable, because the Rosie Project has a likely neurodiverse character, and that's not really fair to say that he's unlikable because he's like quirky, or probably autistic. I'll go with the descriptor quirky. So a character who is quirky, who isn't like the normal main character that we might see in some sort of like contemporary novel, though I don't know what normal means at this point based on everybody's different lived experiences. So we're just getting a person who is sort of being exposed maybe to different types of people, and will be changed through those interactions to maybe be a more welcoming person, because I think that's where we're going in Ove's story. Since it's uplit, I'm thinking that we're going to wind up on an upward trajectory and something with sort of a happy ending. Rosie Project was, a traditional romance in that they actually got a happily ever after. And I don't know that this is where Backman's book is going, but I do think we're headed on this upward trajectory as he's being exposed to his new neighbors and the neighborhood cat that he threw a shoe at. Like, come on, dude. Who throws a shoe? Like, why are we throwing things at animals that don't have homes? Are there worse places that they could be? Anyway, so I'm going to go back to reading. Full day at work today, so we'll see how much I can get done, and I will let you know when I make some more progress. I'm about to head off to work, but I realized I didn't update you on what I read yesterday in A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman. I listened to most of the rest of this book yesterday while I was at work. I have about an hour's worth of listening time today in order to finish it up, and like, I still don't really know. I still don't really like the main character, because he still says things that make me roll my eyes. Like I said, you see like sort of events in his past that have led him to be this sort of untrustworthy curmudgeon. It looks like he might be changing his mind on a couple of things due to circumstances and people that he meets in his general vicinity. And he's caring for the cat that he threw a shoe at earlier. So less infuriated by that, although why did it have to happen that way? I don't know. I can see the Uplit because I feel happy that he's like turning his life around in this stage of his life, but the eye rolling is sort of overwhelming the positive feelings I have. So probably not going to be the highest rated book in this reading vlog, but I'll let you know what I think of the final scene. While I filmed a clip for this vlog in a different setting, my microphone was dead, so I have no audio for that. So here we are back on my couch. It's Monday. I am not at work because we had a pipe burst, so the library is closed today, and I haven't been there in a couple of days because of some things that have happened in our lives. So I guess I'm taking the unexpected day away from work to sort of maybe decompress. I did wind up finishing the last chunk of A Man Called Ova by Fredrik Backman, and I can't say that I loved it. I've previously read Anxious People by the same author and probably enjoyed that more, and I think that I would try to read another of his books. I have my eye on Beartown to see how I feel about that now as a series. But as far as Ova, I just couldn't really get behind him. Yes, we had the Uplit story where he began to embrace his community and became a very well-loved member of the community around him. But I didn't particularly like this person's point of view, so I didn't feel very strongly through most of the book. That said, I am jumping into the next audiobook that I have, which is How the Penguins Saved Veronica by Hazel Pryor. This is a book that I don't know very much about, aside from the fact that I sort of matched the cover today. And it has some very cute penguins, and I love seeing penguins in like nature documentaries or anything like that. So I'll give a listen to this. In this particular story, we have an older woman as our main character. She seems to be a bit curmudgeonly herself, very set on like traditional ways. There was a whole like internal monologue of how nobody uses honorifics anymore. So she wants to be referred to as Mrs. Veronica, whatever her last name is, instead of her housekeeper that she hires coming in and, you know, asking, Veronica, how are you today? She wants her full name being used. So, okay, fine. I guess she winds up at some sort of penguin research lab, like in Antarctica or something. I don't know how she gets there. I guess I will let you know. Well, this story just went bonkers. I have been listening a little bit. I am just at the end of chapter 9 of How the Penguin Saved Veronica, and we get a couple different perspectives. So Veronica is in her mid-80s, and she has reached out to her estranged grandson. The grandson is the product of Veronica's son, who she put up for adoption, maybe. So Patrick has gone through some stuff. They have a very strange relationship where Veronica sort of looks down at, everybody. So she looks down at Patrick's way of living. And Veronica gets in her head that she wants to go to Antarctica to see a camp, a scientific, like a research lab for these penguins on an island in Antarctica. So she's like, well, I'd be happy to leave money for you in my will. My estate is worth over £7 million, which is quite a lot of money. But in order for me to bequeath you these funds, I will have to come and spend 3 weeks at your facility to make sure everything's on the up and up. So they start this email back and forth. Veronica's
helper, housekeeper, employee, has started this email transaction between the research facility and herself on behalf of Veronica. So they start this conversation via email, where Veronica has this employee of hers, like, relaying information of, my trip is booked, I'm coming to spend 3 weeks with you, and the research facility saying, we can't accommodate a nearly 90-year-old woman for 3 weeks, even for a night. We're just not equipped to have an extra person here. And she's like, it's fine, I'll pay for it, don't worry about me, I'm a tough lady. And this poor German researcher is like, I don't know what to do. Like, is there a family member that we can contact? And this employee sends the researcher Patrick's email information. So now I just have this email from this German researcher, and they do the accent in the audiobook, which is how I know he's German, or of some sort of, Central European descent that has a vaguely German accent. Sends this email to Patrick of like, hey, I'm sure you're aware of this, but please try to talk her out of it, or like sign over any liability issues, because if grandma doesn't make it, then it's not our fault because we're telling her not to come. So we'll see how Patrick responds and what Veronica does when she gets to Antarctica and starts causing all sorts of hassle. It's another one of these characters that you're like, why are you entitled to do this? Even when you're being told that, like, this isn't appropriate or possible. Money is not, money is not the answer to everything. You can't just do what you want because you've got the money to pay for it. It's not how it works.
Well, it's been another few days since I have updated this vlog. It is now Monday morning. And based on the timeline, I have had to start and get about halfway through Evvie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes without checking in with you. I did most of my listening today as we drove home from my parents' house. We stayed overnight for the Super Bowl, and it was a good game. Did not turn out the way I wanted it to, but that's okay. There's next season. And we're here to talk about the books. So, Evvie Drake Starts Over features Evvie Drake, who was in the process of leaving her husband and high school sweetheart, who everybody thought was a really great guy. And unfortunately, he died unexpectedly in a car accident. So we have this information. I guess it's about a year later, and everyone believes that Evvie Drake is mourning the loss of her husband, when in reality, she's almost embarrassed by her lack of feeling towards her husband's death, and like the way that society would sort of look at her. I guess if she were to move on, like, it's too complicated to move on, so I'm just going to keep this perception of a, dutiful widow at this point. And our other main character is Dean Tinney, who was a Major League Baseball player for the Yankees and has a case of the yips. So he's a pitcher and he's not able to pitch anymore. So he has sort of retired in disgrace and wants to get out of the media lens and moves into her upstairs apartment. So it's a new situation for both of them, changing dynamics between characters' relationships, and just over halfway through, they do take a step in their personal relationship, which they had promised not to do. They were going to keep it like friends, very distant between the two of them, and that has changed. So I think there's a little more romance in this Uplit novel than in some of the others that I've read so far, which feature significantly older characters. But it's sort of a nice change of pace in this, in the type of story that I've been getting so far, which tended to be, an older character who warms up to the people around them due to their current circumstances. So I'll let you know what I think of this overall. I do have to finish it before 2 o'clock tomorrow. So I am back to listening. I'll check in later. So I don't normally vlog at work, but I'm here on a Saturday and it's pretty quiet here in my conference room. So I thought I might let you know, update you on what I have been reading, which is not a lot. I think last time I checked in, which was Monday, I was listening to Evvie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes. I was reading this for my work's book club discussion, which occurred on Tuesday. So I did finish the book. I think it's a nice read. A different take on Uplit in that we have a much younger character, but she's also still going through loss of a spouse, and recognizing the abuse that she was experiencing within her marriage, which is sort of the part that she's moving forward right into the rest of her life, which I think is some of the Uplit portion. So it was actually a really good discussion on Tuesday regarding this sort of undercurrent of what abuse occurred in our main character's life from both her mother and her spouse, that really provided the depth of discussion in the actual book club. So I'm still in the middle of How the Penguin Saved Veronica by Hazel Pryor. I just haven't been reading very much based on things that are occurring outside of my reading life, I guess, which I might do another video on a little bit more of that, because it's really been affecting my ability to read. But for now, that's all I've got. Let me get through How the Penguin Saved Veronica, and I did have one more book lined up, but we'll see if that makes it into this vlog. In the meantime, I'm going to go finish my lunch. And with that, I have indeed finished How the Penguins Saved Veronica by Hazel Pryor. And it was a joy to see tiny penguins running around an island, and this kind of tottering old lady who wound up on the verge of death, which was quite jarring. We had even an anthropomorphized penguin, in that she was having this sort of hallucinogenic conversation with herself and between herself and this penguin that she had also called Patrick, which is her grandson's name, which, is a little bit wacky. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this vlog, I've sort of been going through it outside of my immediate household, with some loss. But coming back to these, I guess, quirky characters allows you to have a little bit of a chuckle, even if their circumstances are not great, or your circumstances are not great. Overall, the characteristics that I think are shared across the characters within the Uplit genre include some level of quirk. In many of the titles listed, the characters have experienced a traumatic event, typically recently in their lives, although Veronica's trauma occurred when she was much younger in her life, and has sort of carried that, causing her to build walls between herself and other people and avoid making connections. And that trauma, or those walls, begin to break down, and they create, tighter and better relationships between themselves and other people, rather than keeping that wall up and themselves secluded. So looking to rank them, I'll try to slot it in the order that I read them. I started off with The Rosie Project by Graham Simpson, and I'd probably put this 3 out of 4. I don't know how close Simpson is to the autism or Asperger's representation that was included in the novel, and it is over 10 years old at this point, so we may have been having slightly different conversations about folks on the autistic spectrum. So it was an interesting take on the quirky character. Though if the quirk is neurodivergence, then I'm not sure it's really an appropriate use of a characteristic, or a defining aspect of a character. Next, I read A Man Called Ova by Fredrik Backman, and as you can probably tell from the blog footage, I really didn't enjoy this very much. This is like a distant 4 out of 4. I really didn't like Ova. I don't want to give him the benefit of the doubt of this book being 10 years old. I don't really understand the hype. He's throwing things at puppies, and the fact that he then adopts that puppy and takes care of him, it doesn't make up for it. And it was not the most enjoyable experience for me. Maybe it was because that was the week where everything went wrong, but it was not an enjoyable read. It's not going to stop me from reading Backman in the future, but I'm glad that that wasn't my first attempt at reading him either, because I don't know that I would go back if that were my introduction to the author's writing and characters. Next, I did have to read for my book club. We read Evvie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes. This was an interesting one because we had a much younger main character, and we do get a genre romance where we get sort of a happy for now and figuring it out at the end of it. And I think based on those sort of differing characteristics, although Don Tillman is not old in any way, I just felt there was some youthfulness in this young widow's scenario and her relatability to the other characters in the novel, and how high her walls were built for her circumstances in life, and how she and the other characters were able to break those down and build stronger relationships between one another. This is in first place for me, which means the last book that I finished, How the Penguins Saved Veronica by Hazel Pryor, slots in nicely in number 2. This one took me the longest to read because I haven't been reading in the past 10 days or so, aside from having to finish book club selections. So if this book had taken me a few days to read rather than over the course of 10 days, I may have had a more positive view of this particular story. As it stands, these are the rankings. Would I seek out more Uplit titles? Probably. It's a really nice way to escape, to get to know a character deeply and their views on their environment and circumstances and sort of how they came to these conclusions. I did have one other title for this blog that I have decided to put off for maybe the next opportunity that I need some uplifting literature, and that was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This one features a female character who winds up, I think, volunteering at a ocean wildlife refuge and a sentient octopus, or a talking octopus, or we get the perspective of the octopus. I'm not 100% sure, but I do understand it's firmly in this Uplit genre, and will probably take a listen to that at some point in the future. So let me know if you have read any Uplit in the past, if you might seek out this genre moving forward. Have you read any of the books that I selected for this video, and what were your thoughts? If you don't have anything that you'd like to add, leave me a book stack emoji in the comments. Like this video if you've liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more from me, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye. I was just attacked by my cat.
It's at the end of chapter 9.
Or so, aside from having to finish book club selections. So this is tinged a little bit with, excuse me, do you have something to say? Did you fall off the toilet? I don't remember what I was saying, Miss Helen.